If you have your Bibles this morning, find Romans chapter 15. This morning we're going to do something. If you're visiting with us this morning, the sermon this morning is just a little bit unusual. In the sense, it's not the usual type of message that we would normally have. This morning we're going to be doing a special message that I've called the State of the Church Address. I thought, here we are, last Sunday of the year, getting ready to go into 2019. I think it's a good idea to stop and pause. That's what we usually do at the end of the year, don't you? You kind of look at the year, you look back and you say, okay, here's the things that have happened this past year, and then you make resolutions for the new year. Here's the direction we're going to go in next year. Well, that's kind of what we're going to do in this lesson this morning. And I hope that you will share my excitement and enthusiasm about what God has done, is doing, and what He will do at the church, the Linary Church of Christ right here. As I talk about our church today, I feel like a physician is kind of examining kind of a pretty healthy patient. You know, when a physician conducts a physical examination, a person can be very healthy, but he's never perfect. I mean, they may say, well, you know, you're doing great. You might want to back off that cholesterol just a couple more points. You might need to exercise a little more. It might be good for you to kind of do a few things here, take off a couple of pounds. There's always some words to encourage them to be healthier. Well, that's kind of what I want to do. I want to say that the Linary Church of Christ, in my opinion, is a fairly healthy church. There's no such thing, though, as a perfect church. Because you and I are here. And we kind of knocked that out. But if you're looking for a perfect church, you might want to go somewhere else because we're not it. But let me let you in on a little clue here. When you show up, it won't be either. So, but we are a pretty good church. And God has done some great things in this church. And I want to talk about some of those things. I've chosen for our text today out of Romans because that's what Paul does. He addresses the church at Rome and he says some very positive things about that church. And in Romans 15 and verse 14, here's what he says. He says, I myself am convinced, my brothers, that you yourself, and he's talking about the church at Rome, are full of goodness, complete in knowledge, and competent to instruct one another. Now, the word instruct, I like the King James translation of that actually, which he says admonish, which means to challenge. I'm challenging this church. I'm challenging this church to do some things. And so that's what I want to do. Now, I'm talking to you not only about the compliment, but I'm also going to give you a challenge. That's what we're going to do. So, verse 15, he says, I have written you boldly on some points, as if to remind you of them again because of the grace that God gave you. And I'm going to speak rather boldly today to you about the church. I'm going to speak rather boldly today, as if to remind you of them again because the grace of God gave me to be a minister of Christ Jesus to the Gentiles with a priestly duty to proclaim the gospel of Christ, so that the Gentiles might become an offering acceptable to God, sanctified by the Holy Spirit. That's what Paul said. So I want to start out, just like Paul did, with a positive compliment about the church. A positive compliment. I want to say two things to you today as we think about the Linary Church of Christ. First of all, I want to, again, what I call this positive compliment. Now, if you look again in verse 14, Paul says about the church at Rome, he says, I am convinced that you are full of good works, of goodness. I say the same thing about Linary. There are some great, good things about Linary. I want to share some of them with you. You know, Lord Jesus wrote 7 letters to the 7 churches of Revelation. And to the church at Thyatira, he writes something, and I believe he would write to the church at Linary. He wrote in Revelation chapter 2:19, I know your deeds, and he does. I know your deeds, your love and faith, your service and perseverance, and that you're now doing more than you did the first. You're doing more than before. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of churches out there today that their glory days are past. That what you could say about them is the things that they have done rather than what they're doing. I don't think that's true about the Lionary Church of Christ. The Lionary Church of Christ is a growing, thriving church, and I believe that our most promising days are ahead of us, that God is going to bless us. I want to compliment the church today. Now, I'm not bragging on us. I'm bragging on the church of the Lord Jesus Christ. The Bible says the church is the bride of Christ. And if you say something good about my bride, Gayla, I'm going to say, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Because that's what we ought to do. And that's what we're doing. I don't mind you bragging about my bride whatsoever. And I know Jesus doesn't mind us bragging about his church, his bride. So today I want to brag about the bride of Christ, the Lionary Church of Christ. And as I compliment this church on several areas. First of all, the first thing I want to compliment the church on is a committed leadership. I want to commend you because we have some good leaders in this church. And we've had some good leaders. This year we've kind of made a few changes. We've added a couple of elders. Mark stepped down this year. I hated to see him step down. He thinks he's going to be able to travel some this next year. I don't think he's ever going to slow down enough to be able to get what he thinks he wants. But we really appreciate. How many years did you serve in the congregation? 17 years? 17 years that Mark committed to this congregation. And you know what? One of the things that speaks well to this eldership, of their understanding of the work that they do, and the understanding of this leadership is the idea, because there are a lot of congregations that, the only way you can step down from the eldership is either some moral failure or they put you in the grave. And that's not the way it ought to be. We need to serve where we can serve, and as long as we can serve. But there's nothing wrong with saying, it's time to let somebody else step up. And I appreciate Mark in his willingness to say, I think it's time for someone else to step into this place. I've served for 17 years in this position. We're wanting to do some things and travel and do some other things and let some other men step up. Well, we added 2 new elders this year, but the leaders that we have in this church have such good hearts. Now, the head of the church is the Lord Jesus Christ. And we're not a perfect church, but we follow a perfect head. And I want to say that your elders are committed to Jesus. And your elders are committed to following him. Now, they don't always make the right decision every time. They're men. They fail. They make mistakes. I appreciate men who aren't afraid to make mistakes. You know what I mean? I know some elders that are so afraid of making a mistake that the biggest mistake they make is they don't do anything. They sit back and just do nothing because they're afraid that if we do this, well, it could lead to this. I hate that kind of leadership. That's not leadership at all. That's just fear. But we have some men who want to step out and do some things and try some things. And you could just go down the list, person after person after person in this church. You may not realize this, but this is the only church you could go to most of the time and know that you're a really blessed church. Because I know a lot of churches where they're just not willing to step out. They're not really willing to lead the church. You think of the gifted church that we have. Now, I'm not just talking about our elders. I'm talking about leaders in this church in other areas. Our work team leaders and our deacons in this church and our elders in this church. We are a blessed congregation. We have talent in this congregation that is unbelievable. And all you have to do is travel around. All you got to do is talk to some preacher friends and look at some other churches and see some of the problems other churches have. And it causes me to thank God for the leaders that we have. If you haven't told them lately, you need to tell them individually how much you appreciate them, because we do have some wonderful men who serve in this church. Elders, and again, team leaders and deacons in this church. They understand that they are true servants of Jesus. So our elders and leaders have made a commitment to be servant leaders. The verse I want you to read is Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 7. It says this, remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Now our elders and our leaders understand our number one role. Their number one role to you as a church is to model Christ. They understand that. I know a lot of churches where, the elders think that their only job is to make decisions on where the money goes. Our elders hate to talk about money. They talk about it, but they don't spend a lot of time talking about it. They've given it over to the committee, and the committee, we have a finance committee, and they make some decisions. They come to the elders and ask them, here's what we've got, and the elders, but that's not nothing new for this congregation, to be honest with you. I can remember back when I was here the first time, one of the things I've said about this church over and over is we have an eldership that you don't have to come to and convince things. If you've got a good idea and you want to do it, and it fits within the scope of the work of the church here, they will say yes more than they will say no. Because they want to see this church utilizing the talents that it has and reaching forward. And I appreciate these guys. We understand that's the best thing we could do for you to be, as leaders, is to be good examples. And that's being done by being servant leaders. So the first compliment that I want to pay is the idea of our committed leadership. The second compliment I want to give is your amazing generosity. Your amazing generosity. Here's the second area I want to compliment the church on. Our church demonstrates amazing generosity. Not every church is that way. Some are so stingy, but not this church. This church is a tremendously generous church. And I heard about back in the day, circuit rider preacher, an old preacher went out to a little church, got off his horse, went in. Back in the day, that's kind of the way it used to be. They would go from place to place and they'd preach, and he'd start early in the morning and travel until that night, preaching at different churches. And the men said to the preacher, now preacher, this is what we'll do. After you preach, we'll let you pass your hat, and whatever offering we get, that's what your pay will be for the day. So the circuit rider preacher, he preached his heart out, did probably one of the best sermons he thought he'd ever done, preached his heart out, preached the word of God, got done, he took off his hat, they passed the preacher's hat up and down the sides of the church, all around the church. The preacher got it back, he looked inside, it was totally empty. He turned it upside down, shook it, nothing fell out of that hat. Not a nickel, not a dime, not a dollar. It was nothing in the hat. The preacher said, folks, now let's bow our heads and thank God for this offering. Well, they wonder, what in the world is he going to thank God for? He said, dear Lord, knowing this congregation the way I do, I thank you that I got my hat back. There are a lot of churches that way. There's some churches like that, but not the Linear Church of Christ. You guys are so generous. Whenever whenever there's a need, you meet that need. And always come through. This church has a history of doing that. One of the things we did this year is, my first Sunday that I started this year was we burnt the note on the building. Can you imagine that? 13 years. And this huge building is paid off completely. Why? Because of your generosity. Because of what you've done. Let me give you some numbers. Now, these numbers don't necessarily cover everything that's gave during the year, but it gives you an indication. These numbers are pretty interesting. Now, you got to remember now, and I'll just say this right off the phone, this year we didn't give as much as we gave last year, but last year there was a big push to pay off the building. But let me show you how close it was. In 2014, you gave $494,959. That's an average of $9,518.44. 2015, you gave $510,710, an average of $96.21. In 2016, you gave $572,889. That's an average of $11,017. In 2017, you gave $621,733, and again, that was with a big push to pay off the building. That's $11,956.42. Now, what's remarkable is a lot of churches, when they pay off their building, their contribution will plummet because people just don't think there's a need. This year, 2018, where we are right now, you gave $585,000. That's an average of $11,250. That is pretty good. I mean, that's kind of remarkable because we haven't had any real big pushes financially this year for different things. We're up from 2 years ago, a little bit down from last year, but still, how tremendous that is. Our need for 2019 is only $10,855.36 with the budget that we've got in place. But let me tell you something about budgets. Budgets are a goal. Budgets are, actually, they're not really much of a goal. They're kind of a layout of what we've done and what we know we're going to have in order to maintain what we're going to do. But we have some big plans for this church. I remind you that, first of all, number one, you don't give to the church. You give to God. And you don't give your money because God needs it, because, I've got news for you. God doesn't need your money. But God will use what you give, and you give because God has blessed you, and you give because you're thankful to God for what He's done. And it doesn't. And I need to give to God, and you need to give to God more than God needs what I give. But a good steward realizes everything I own belongs to God, and because I love God, I'm going to give a portion back to God. And I thank God for letting me be a part of the Line Church of Christ. I commend you. I compliment you because of your generosity. Now, I'm going to get into some things here in just a few minutes of what we have planned on doing. We actually, because of your giving and because we have been good stewards, I'll tell you this, you don't want to mess with this finance committee we got here. They watch every penny, and they ought to. That's what they know, that they have been given charge. The idea of the elders have charged them to look where the money is going, make sure that we're doing the best with the money that we can, and they have done a fantastic job of doing that. So much so that we actually ended the year with a pretty good surplus, and we're going to use that to do some great things for God. But because we've taken some areas, of course, one of the things is we budgeted this year too that we didn't use was we budgeted for a youth minister, but we weren't able to get someone that fit us. By the way, we've had 14 applications for a youth minister. We narrowed it down to 2 that fit us, and we lost both those 2 to somebody else. But one of our goals for next year is to get a new youth minister. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we have been using the money well. We've not been blowing money and throwing money. We've actually been pretty intentional in the way we've been spending our money, and we thank God for that. And we want to do that. And that leads me to my next thing, though, is the next compliment. Not only are you good givers, and not only do we have good leaders, but the next thing I love about this church is our willingness to innovate. What a compliment to this church. Now, here's what I want to compliment you. You possess a willingness to innovate, to be different, a willingness to even accept, I know this is a dirty word to a lot of churches, but change. That's not a dirty word. Change is part of life, isn't it? I'm not the same person I was. I've been gone 15 years. Some of you say, well, you're still just as bouncing around as you used to be, but I've changed in 15 years. You've changed. You changed. Not to change is to be dead, and then you change back to dust. But we're all changing. And if you're not changing, you're dead. And but a lot of people cannot stand. It's almost, again, a dirty word, but we want to do things. Let me read to you a verse. Paul said this. He said in 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 21, he says, though I am free and belong to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jew, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that by all possible means I might save some. You know, when I moved to come back here, from Kentucky, I never forget some people in Kentucky who friends of mine, preacher friends and things like that, says, you're going to a rough area. Yeah, they know this part of the country. And they said, you're going to a rough area. I said, those people up there, they're not very open to change. They're not going to be very innovative and all this kind of thing. They're kind of, if you go to the further east in Tennessee you go, the more backward they are and that kind of things. And let me tell you something, I hadn't found that to be true. I have not found that to be true. I'm really serious. They may be the case in other places, but here at the Line Area Church of Christ, this church is wonderful because you guys will try anything. I mean, we did brats and root beers for Father's Day. You will try anything. At 8 o'clock in the morning, you will try anything. Because you guys will and that's good. That's where we need to be. I think if I say you're going to if I were to announce in the pulpit that we're going to attack hell tomorrow with water pistols, there'd be some of you saying, where do I fill up? I mean, that's what you do. You're ready to do it. But just look at some of the things that we've done. We've upgraded some things in the church here. The big thing we did, you hired a new preacher. I told you how good these elders are. They're really smart guys. They hired a new preacher. We had 30-something that went to DS1 this year, training. We had a big Mother's Day. That was fun. Wasn't that fantastic? We took the pictures. We did breakfast for mothers, and we did family portraits. We gave those, and we had Father's Days, like I say, brought and root beer, and had a great day then. We did our summer series. We tried our summer series. I'm going to talk about our attendance here in a few minutes. Our attendance during the summer did not drop. Traditionally, that's what it does. This year, it did not. Matter of fact, it went up. Why? Because we were willing to try something different. I've heard so many people say, man, that was wonderful. I got some ideas for this year. Somebody gave me an idea the other day about doing some things. We may try that. A friend of mine told me about, I don't know if you've ever heard of 12 questions, but basically sending out a card, a thing, and put it online. It has a place where they can go online, do a survey, and just ask the public 12 questions. We actually, if you were to talk to God, what would you ask him? And then do the summer series based on those, take the 12 top questions and do your summer series based on those 12 questions that people from the public have about God. Wouldn't that be great? I think that's a good idea. I don't know. That's something we're talking about doing. But we did the summer series. We had our buzz events. We had, what was it? How much did we have? 506, I think it was, or was it 605? I'm going to take preacher's count, 605. For our buzz event that we had this year with Al Robertson. Wasn't that fantastic? He delivered a fantastic message. Now, I would have loved to, and we were ready for it. We could have put 1,500 people in this building, but, we were ready for it. We had the 2 services. What a great message that he gave. We're going to try to do some more of that. We've expanded our presence on Facebook. I think it's pretty neat that Mark's mother's not here this morning. She wanted to know how she could get on and see the service live. And if you're there, hey, Mom. But we're doing our services live on Facebook now. Isn't that great? I mean, we're expanding our presence on the internet. We have 2 Facebook accounts. We got a Twitter account. We've updated. If you've not been on our webpage, you need to go to our webpage. We have a really good webpage at lineareachurch.com or lineareachurch.org. Same website. It'll take you to the same place. But on that, you have things that are coming up. You can watch any of the sermons that we've done. The bulletin's on there. Our community Thanksgiving meal. Didn't we set a record this year on the community Thanksgiving meal? You were in charge of it. What? 1402 is what we did. I was incredibly impressed with how well that went, by the way. You guys did a fantastic job. Despite Linda sitting there saying, not my job. You did good, though. But she let everybody know. The Veterans Day thing, wasn't that a fantastic event? That was so moving. We really did. I planned to do a sermon that morning. Y'all, those ladies that did those quilts preached the sermon themselves. What a great thing that was when we honored all of those things. And we did all kinds of different things. Our vacation Bible school this year, it's been how many years since we had a vacation Bible school? A bunch. We had a tremendous vacation Bible school, and it's going to even be better this year. Matter of fact, we were already talking about it. Matt and I went to lunch together. What was it, Sunday before last? Last Sunday? Sunday before last, we went to lunch together, and we were sitting there at the table. Matt and I were just talking, and we just started getting all excited and everything. Before we left the table, we pretty well picked a theme for next year, but we're going to have a meeting at the end of this month. But we're thinking about, I said, we need to find whatever's going to be the blockbuster this year and see what it is. Well, you know what the blockbuster is supposed to be this summer? Lion King. The new Lion King. It's supposed to be good. We're thinking about doing our vacation Bible school called The King, and doing like Solomon and Samson and, of course, the King of Kings and all that. But, and using the Lion King thing. I don't know. That's just what we're batting around. Also, Legos is coming out, too. We could do a Lego and let God. But, but there's all kinds of things we could do. I mean, we want to do some things. We want to reach out. We want to be exciting. We want to be innovative in the things that we're doing. I don't want to just buy a box kit that everybody else is doing, that they can go to 20 different vacation Bible schools to get the same thing. We're going to do something innovative. Why? Because we want our kids to get excited about things. We're wanting to reach out further in our outreach to Winterfest. There used to be a time when we'd have 120 people go to Winterfest. I want to renew that interest again. And I think the things, we talk about youth ministry. We want to get a new youth ministry this year. But I'm going to tell you, the thing that's going to make our youth better is you parents getting involved with your kids like we used to. Where we have as many parents going to Winterfest as we have kids going to Winterfest. That was probably one of my favorite things during the year we used to do. And you parents who don't go with your kids to Winterfest, you're missing out. I'm just telling you. You're missing out on a time to bond with your kids, to discuss the things that are going on there, to see the excitement that's going on and get excited with your kids. And that way you could carry that excitement on with you. But we need to be innovative in our things. Somebody said the only person who likes change is a baby with a wet diaper. And even he squalls about it. People don't like change. But you know what I've found? I have found Lion Area has been so open to change and doing things differently. And I want to compliment you on that. I want to compliment you on that. The coffee thing out here. We started to do that. Some say, well, there might be somebody fuss about that, getting coffee and bring it, and if we do that, are we going to let them bring it into the auditorium? I said, well, if you're not going to let them bring it into the auditorium, you need to leave it back there where they can't see it. But they said, no, you know what, you're right. And they opened it up. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with making didn't it make the foyer just look so more, inviting? By the way, our plans next year is to fix the visitor center much like that with the same type wood and everything. And that's our goal. Hopefully we'll do it in January, February, somewhere in there during the winter months. But to try to do some things to reach out and to, we went out to the fair again. What a great opportunity that was. The Boo Fest that we did this year. Oh my, what an opportunity. They told us when they had the Boo Fest this year, expect about 500 people. They missed it by about 300%. They were no more than that. Because there were over 4,000. I was thinking 1,500. There's over 4,000 people there at Boo Fest. This year, we're going to put a booth out there and go bigger, which means we need you to work it this year too. Kayla and I did it mostly, and we had a couple of people that showed up. But this year, we're going to man it big time. What a great opportunity that was. And what a great opportunity it is for this year for us to do some things, to get into town and get our name out, and people see who we are and what we're doing, and get them out here. By the way, I mentioned the Buzz event that we had. If your first time coming, I know there's a couple that's here. Raise your hand if you came for the first time during Al Roberts. How many in y'all family? That's bad when you got to stop and think about how many is in your family. I'm just saying. How many? 6 plus adults. 8. There's 8 right there that we picked up from Al Roberts. Right there. Isn't that amazing? Lillian Fox told me that after her Bible class, that her Bible class exploded after Vacation Bible School. That she had like 12 people in there. Only 2 of them were our regulars. 10 of them came from Vacation Bible School. Guys, I'm telling you, we need to be to reach out. Third thing I want to say is about our continuing growth. I want to compliment you because you've been experiencing continued growth through the years. I know you can make statistics say anything you want to. As a matter of fact, for instance, did you know that they've proven that 42.6% of all statistics are made up on the spot? By the way, I made that one up too. Yeah, you can make statistics say anything you want to. But let me give you some numbers because you could measure something sometimes only by numbers. This past year, 2018, we had 5 baptisms. Now, honestly, I was a little disappointed in the number of baptisms we've had this year because actually an average congregation should have 10% of what they have in their Bible class, in their Sunday morning Bible class, should be about the number of baptisms that you have in an average congregation. So we're down in baptism for what we ought to have. But let me tell you about our attendance. Our attendance for 2015, I don't know if I put that up there. I did. Average 2015 was 226. That was our average attendance in church during the morning worship services in 2015. 226. In 2016, it was 228. In 2017, it was 230. And so far this year, not counting it was 605 that we had for that big service. Not counting the 605 is not included in our weekly average. We averaged 240. So that's up 10 plus whatever if you add that 605 in, it's even more than that. But that's good. We're continuing to grow. Our average attendance is growing. Now, what is our standard? What's the Bible? And by the way, let me give you a couple other statistics. Also, our Wednesday average was 2015, 104. This year's 127. Our Sunday school used to be 108. It's 111 now. So, I mean, we're up in our averages, in our attendance. But, of course, our standard's the Bible. And when you go to the book of Acts, you see, the very first thing you see about the church in Jerusalem, was it started out with 120 members. Acts chapter 2 says that there are 3,000 added to the church on the day of Pentecost. Chapter 4 of Acts said the church had grown until it was 5,000 men, not counting women and children. Then you go to Acts 21, towards the end of the book, the last reference to the book of Jerusalem, or the church of Jerusalem, was that it had myriads, it said. The King James says multitudes. Myriads means 10,000. Now here's a church that went from 120 to 3,000 to 5,000 to 10,000. So if you try to think God doesn't like big churches, then what you're saying is the book of Acts wasn't God's plan. God plans for His church to grow. And we need to be growing. We got to understand growth is good. God has always blessed growth. Now I thank God we've grown this past year, but I know we need to do more. In Psalm 47, verse 1. By the way, I hadn't really looked close to this verse before, but somebody wants to know if there's clapping in the Bible. Here it is. Clap your hands, all you people. Shout unto the Lord with a voice of trumpets or triumph. I know sometimes that's not very Church of Christ, but I want to shout something when I think about how good God has been to this church. I want to shout sometimes when I think about how great God is. And, you know, maybe you heard a story about the old farmer who went to the state fair one time. And he was, years ago, they had this barnstorming pilot that was there, and he was giving rides for $50 a ride. You could ride in an airplane. Well, this guy, it was an open cockpit airplane back in the day, you know. He was offering these rides during the state fair, and the pilot said, that you could just ride for $50. Well, this old farmer, poor as he could be, poor as dirt, man, he just wanted to ride in that airplane. I mean, he'd never gotten that close to an airplane before he wanted to ride it. And so he told him, said, I just can't afford to do that. He said, I tell you what, the pilot said, I'll give you a ride in that airplane if you will ride. But one thing, if you say one word, you're going to have to pay me $50. So the old farmer went over to his wife and said, honey, we get a chance to ride in this airplane. He said, but you can't say a word. I mean, don't open your mouth. Because he said if we open a mouth, it's going to cost us some money. So you keep your mouth shut. So the pilot went out there, and he goes and they starts flying. He starts doing everything he could. He starts doing loop-de-loops and dives and all these different things. And he barrel rolls and does all these. Finally, he lands. He turns to the farmer. He says, sir, I've got to tell you, you're the bravest man I've ever seen. He says, I even scared myself on this flight. I can't believe you didn't shout any time on my flight. The farmer, who was a little bit dizzy, said, well, there was one time I almost hollered. The pilot said, well, when was that? He said, well, that's when Mama fell out. Yeah. The point I want to try to give you out of the story is this. If there's ever been a time that you wanted to shout about what God's been doing in our church, this is the time. I mean, he's done great things. Now, your challenge. And I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to give you everything I've got because it's 11 o'clock. But look at the other side, because I've given you a compliment. I want to give you a challenge. Verse 15, he says, I have written you quite boldly on some points, as if to remind you of them again because of the grace God gave me. He means I'm going to give you a challenge. He talks about I spoke bold words to you and wrote bold words to you. In Revelation 3, he talks about in verse 8, I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet have kept my word and have not denied my name. I want to say to you that God has placed an open door for this church. That there's a great opportunity for this church in this coming year. And we need to make sure that we go through that door. We must understand, first of all, that if we grow, you need, the one thing that bothers a lot of churches, when churches grow, people say, well, now, I just don't, now the church has gotten big, I don't know everything going on. That's not a bad thing. You know what? That's a sign that the church is growing. I want to challenge you to do a better job of understanding how large your church functions. You know what the average size of the average Church of Christ is, by the way? 100 members. The statistics show that a church of 100 members can pretty well maintain. If they have 100 members, they can pay a preacher, they can open the doors, they can pay their lights, and that's about it. And so that's the average size of an average congregation in the Brotherhood is 100 members. The church that I served right out of school in Alabama, we had 100 members. I was the only, matter of fact, I was their first full-time minister that they had in that church for time. Actually, they had one before, but he had come out of it. He didn't make much because he actually worked a full-time job too at the same time. So they didn't pay him much, but I was their first full-time minister with a family. Everyone knew everything that took place in that church. I mean, everything. For a time, we didn't have elders or deacons, and we would have business meetings. And I can remember one time we had this business meeting. We were talking about buying a riding mower for the church. And there was a group that was for it. And there was a group that was against it. And, we're buying this riding lawnmower for the church. And we finally came to a vote, and they voted for it, took a vote to buy the riding mower. And praise God, they voted to get a riding lawnmower for that church. I was pretty excited about it until I found out that they expected the preacher to ride that riding lawnmower. But that's the way it is in a little church. Everybody has a say in everything that goes on in that church. Everybody knows everything's going on. Just relax. As we grow, everybody will not know everything that takes place in this church. I don't know everything that goes on in this church. Thank God I don't know everything that goes on in this church. There's no way I can. I don't see that as a bad thing that everybody doesn't know everything that goes on at the church. Wouldn't it be great if there were so many ministries happening that you didn't know everything? By the way, I don't know whether some of you realize Mason Fox has started a ministry here at this church that's just been going on here recently. And we have an adult basketball league, and I showed up on a Thursday night just to see what they were doing. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I hope we're using our church building a lot more this coming year than we've been using it. He's using it on Thursday nights, every Thursday night now. And those guys that are coming are complimenting the church. They're complimenting us from doing that, and they're complimenting the fact that Mason doesn't allow them to use language and things of that nature. How nice everybody is when they come to. Isn't that true? And he said, these guys come and say, this is really neat. But we don't have to know everything that goes on for the church to go forward, and that's one of the things you got to understand. That we're going to try to communicate to you the best we can, but let me tell you, you're not going to know everything that goes on in this church. That doesn't mean we're not doing things. Now, I'm going to put these up real quick. Some things we're going to do. We're going to, emergency assistance is requested. We help people a lot of time, a lot of different ways. A lot of times we've been cooperating with Good Samaritans. Mickey, that's all I can think is Mickey. Good Samaritans we've kind of tied with them to help people, but we've developed guidelines. We develop a network among our community. We're talking about remodeling the foyer. We're talking about our education, forming an education committee. First of the year, assign department leaders to our education department. We're actually going to be a little more, we're looking for a couple of people, by the way, for this committee, and myself and Roland are going to be on that committee, but we're going to form a committee for our education committee. Our youth groups, we're going to have special events this year. We're trying to have summer camp this year. We want to get youth minister in place this year. This year, we're talking about communicating better with our weekly website, or our calling tree. I'm trying to do a little better with that, our Facebook, our Twitter account, all those different things. Our finances, we established our budget. Last year it was made before we got our budget in place. We've got it. Have we approved it yet? We did approve it, didn't we? Yeah, we approved it. We're starting a new year with a budget in place. Isn't that awesome? They're talking about doing a monthly review of the budget. Our finance team, they're talking about adding some members to our current AOT committee. We're talking about in our involvement services is clarifying ministries' functions and expectations in our ministry for this year. We're talking about assigning leaders to different ministries and adding to those. And we're talking about some special events like a Super Bowl, SOUPER. A Super Bowl event. With Super Bowl this year, we're going to all bring soup here to the building. We're going to watch the ball game and the thing out there. We're going to have some camp involvement. We're going to have some more buzz events this year. We're going to do a lot more different events. We're going to have some more family events. We had a game thing this year. We're going to do more of that this next year. We're going to have some special topic seminars. We're going to have some worship and praise events. We're going to have ladies retreat, men's retreat. We're talking about we're talking about our technical media development team a little better on that, improving our stage lighting and sound equipment. Matter of fact, we were talking about that this morning. Working on that, continuing improving our programming, continuing improving our equipment. We're upgrading some of our equipment is 13 years old that they're using in the sound room up there. Our worship leaders, improving our coordination. We've been working on that a lot this year, but improving our coordination and our worship leaders' duties and expectations and training. We're talking about, again, youth. This year, this is the thing that I'm really excited about. What I really wanted to get to before we leave is because of the surplus of money that we have this year, we're going to emphasize much greater this year. And hopefully, if you'll pick up your giving, it will be a continual thing. But we've got the seed money to start this with this year, and that is really get deep in our missions, both local and foreign missions. We're talking about doing a youth mission trip of sending, what we say, about 16 kids. If 16 kids are interested, going on a foreign mission trip, and the church paying a majority of that, church earning credit for doing, our kids earning credit to do some things, and go on a foreign mission trip. Talking about encouraging our adults to get more involved in the mission trips. Money will not be your problem. If you can't afford to go on a trip, but you got a passion for one, we're going to try to help out. We're going to do a quarterly mission survey, which I'm excited about. We're actually, Scott or somebody's going to get up and emphasize an area of missions that we're going to get into this year. By the way, we're going to start the year off right. Gail and I are going on a mission trip January the 8th. We're leaving January the 8th. We'll be gone for 16 days. Kenneth Chadwell's going to preach one Sunday while I'm gone. And Joe's going to preach one Sunday while I'm gone. I'm going to be gone 2 Sundays. But we're going to Bangkok, Thailand. You know, we support Gary and Michelle in the mission work they're doing in Thailand. We haven't seen them in 3 years. And, you know, of course, I'm not complaining because my kids are doing fantastic. And but they're doing that mission work there. I'm supposed to preach. The church already contacted me. They want me to preach, teach some classes while I'm there, visit the refugees while we're there. But our main thing is encouraging Michelle and Gary in the mission that they're doing there. We're going to start out January the 8th through the 23rd. But every quarter we're going to be doing something. There are some great things he's got here listed out. For instance, our first quarter is going to emphasize the youth mission trip. Second quarter, talking about doing some work in Liberia, actually helping with a school. Our fourth quarter, we're talking about doing a local mission where we could do something here, the Magi Project. We're talking about future missions of Timothy Hill Ranch, ongoing missions that we're continuing to do, doing more, putting missions in front of the church. And I'm excited about that for this church. So be praying about that. I'm not going to give you the rest of what I got for this morning. We're going to put a period right there. But I want to say that God has blessed this church. And God will continue to bless this church if we continue to be the people that He's called us to be. If our leadership continues to be the kind of leadership that wants to be servant leaders. If you continue in the path that you have in being generous. Again, we've got some seed money to start doing some of these great mission works. We hope that your giving will be so that we'll replenish that money, and that money will just be something we'll start to be able to do every year in sending our youth. Because, I mean, that's expensive. 15 kids going on what do we say is about how much a person? Is it $1,500 a person? So you just add that up. I mean, that's a lot of money. But, you know, we think it's that important. I'm going to tell you what. And you parents, older people, some of you parents might want to say, you know what, you're talking about adults going, this may be the trip I want to go because I want to experience it with my children. But be praying about these things. Be praying about the work here. Be praying about, you know, we did one big buzz event this year. We're hoping to do more than one this year. Be praying about that. God will bless us if we'll walk through that door that He's opened for us. And I know this is a long one for the first, end of the year, but I'm sorry, y'all just too good. I had too much to cover. But I praise God for what He can do for this church. And again, you might want to end your year right this morning. If you're not a Christian, the best thing you could ever do is end your year. And by the way, it add to our numbers that we got more than 5. But be baptized today. Start the new year off right. Make next year, 2019, your best year by coming to Jesus this morning. Be praying about this work. You are members. End this year off right. Be the example that you need to be. Get involved in the things you need to get involved in. We need so many more people plugging in. And we want you to be. Well, we've got a ton of people doing things. There was how many? Over 100 and something people that were involved in our buzz event that we had here. We figured there was like 150 different people. We had about 150 people involved in Vacation Bible School this year. The thing that we did with the feeding the community. Oh my goodness, there was a crowd of you guys here. There was 150 plus there. That's what we need for this church to go forward. But this morning, you may need the prayers of the church. If we can help you in any way this morning, I want to encourage you. As we stand, we offer the invitation.